Hey guys, thanks for tuning in. Today we will be designing and animating these awesome FAQ accordions. We will be using the interactive components for this, so it's going to be a fun one. Let's get started. Okay, so let's create a frame here. I'm going to choose a generic desktop size. Let's zoom in a little bit. Now just let's call it something like component set because we are going to create our components here. Okay, so first, just for some guidelines, I'm going to create a simple layout grid here. I'm going to choose columns which are going to be 12, and it's going to be center with 70 width and 30 padding. Okay, okay, now let's change the background to something like this so we can better see our frame here. So let's create our base here, right? So let's choose the frame here, and I'm going to just create a simple and clean rectangle. So I'm going with 6 column. So let's drop it here. So the width is going to be 570 and the height is going to be something like 88. Okay, let's zoom in. So now since we have our height, let's hide these columns. Okay, now choose our main frame here. Let's rename it to something like since it's going to be a closed version, so this is going to work something like this. Closed container, since it is going to contain our headings and description. Now give it some fill. So we are going to choose this, and let's add some border. So something like this, a gray color would work, right? Looks good. And let's round the corners to 8. It looks much more smoother. Okay, now let's add some shadow. So let's click the effects panel, and I usually go something like 50, and for Y I use something like 20, and for the opacity I go something like 7. So it's going to be nice and smooth like this. Okay, so this is our base ready. So inside we will be adding new headings and stuff here. So keep in mind we need to create an auto layout here. So let's just click auto layout here. Okay, since we did that, it automatically added some paddings here. So we don't need that because we will be adding those to our heading. So let's set it at 0, 0. Okay, and also set it at 0 here. Okay, and because we need to maintain the width here. For now, let's choose a fixed width, and for height also choose the fixed height. Okay, I will explain why I did that later. Okay, so let's add a heading inside of it. So let's choose a text tool and just click inside, anywhere inside, and let's uh, write something. Okay, so this is a question, very original. So select the font weight to be bold, and select the size to be around 24. So since we don't have any paddings added to the main container, it defaults to something like this. So obviously we don't want that. So let's add auto layout to this text. Okay, so you won't see it here. On your keyboard, press Shift and A. So as you can see how it added an auto layout inside. Okay, so let's rename it to much more appropriate thing. So it's going to be a heading. Okay, and we want this text to expand to the full width. So let's set it to fill container. So as you can see how it automatically expanded. And for the height, let's also change it to fill container. And let's select vertically center. Okay, so it defaults to this. Okay, so we have some paddings here, but these are not enough. So let's add something like 30. And for the height, we can also do at the top and bottom, we can also add something like 30. So now that we have our title here, let's add our arrow. So before I do that, I will change this auto layout setting. So so right now the spacing mode is set as packed. So let's change it to space between. So when I add the arrow here, it's going to snap to the right side. So since we don't have anything here right now, the title defaults to the center. So let's quickly add our arrow here. So I already have an arrow up here, so I'm going to just copy it, and I'm going to just paste it inside our heading frame. So as you can see how it automatically snapped here. This container is good to go. Now we need to create a different state of it, right? So I am not going to create a component yet. First let's create another state here. So let's quickly copy the same thing. Right now I'm pressing shift and alt. I'm just going to drag the whole thing below like this. And as you can see, we need to rename it. So let's choose it, this one. So this is going to be an open container. Okay, so now let's increase the height of it. So as you can see, since we have our headings height set as fill, so that's why it's also resizing. So we need to quickly change that. And let's open the container inside the height. Let's set it to a fixed height. Okay, so let's choose a fixed height. So let's see what we selected earlier. So it's around 88. So I'm going to set it to the same thing. Okay, so 88 here. Okay, now we need to add a border right at the bottom. So let's choose border here, and I'm going to select the same color. So let's choose the same color as this, and just set it as below the bottom. So we don't need to select it all. So it's going to show up like this. So now we have our container, inside we have our heading. So let's add some additional text here, right? So let's choose the text tool. And okay, so before we do that, we need to set the main container as a vertical layout, because we will be adding uh, additional text at the bottom. So it's not going to work if our layout is set at horizontal. So let's set it at vertical. Now we can add additional text here. So just click, and just, very original. As you can see, we don't have any auto layout right now. That's why it defaults to this. So let's add auto layout here. So shift A once again. So here we have our auto layout, and as before, let's set it to fill, but I'm going to keep the height as default, because we need to expand the height as we enter more text. So I'm going to just keep it as it is, but for the padding I'm going to choose 30. And for the top bottom padding I'm also going to choose 30. So let's change the text so it looks more like a description. So medium and the size I'm going to choose 18, and right now the color is black, so let's choose something a little bit, so like this, a little darker gray, maybe it could work. So let's just add more text here, so I'm going the top once again to find the text I already added. So here it is, just copy it, and I'm going to just paste it here. So as you can see, why it went out of our frame, because we need to also set our text layer as the fill container, right? So okay, so now let's rename it this to something like this. Okay, as you can see, it is also touching the bottom, it's not expanding right now because our main frame is currently set as a fixed height. We need to change it to a different option so it expands. So as you can see how it expanded automatically. So if I add more text to it, let me add something. So as you can see, when I add more text, it automatically just expand it, right? So let's delete this stuff. Okay, so I think both of our states are ready, so let's create a component. Let's select both of them, and up here, instead of clicking this option which is going to create a single component, let's click this arrow, and here let's create a component set. So let's see what happens. So as you can see, it created a single component with two different states inside, right? So let's quickly rename these two, something like FAQ accordion, right? And we have our two different states. As you can see here on the right side, it has properties. So let's quickly rename it. So instead of this default text, I'm going to call it state. It's going to be a state. So uh, one is going to be a open state. So let's delete this, and this one is going to be a closed state. Okay, we are done with the design part. One thing is missing. I want this arrow to be flipped when the container is open, so I'm just going to select it. By the way, you click control and click to select the individual elements inside the frames, right? So let's just going to press shift here to maintain the angle, and I'm just going to rotate it like this. Okay, so it will look something like this. So let's move over to our prototype here, and we don't have anything here right now. We need to create some connections. Okay, so I'm going to choose the first component, and if I hover over here, you can see it has option to create a connection. So just click and drag it and drop it right here. Okay, and since this is already a component, Figma already knows what we are doing, and it has already added some default interactions here. So I think this is already pretty good. So let me just explain it what we are doing right now. So we are saying to Figma that when this element is clicked, you need to change its state to a opened version, right? So I think Figma pretty much did all our job. We just need to change this instant to smart animate so we can see the actual animation. So click OK, and I'm going to keep the ease out as it is. Okay, and I'm going to close this one. So we have our first interaction. Now we need to create another interaction, so when the open version is clicked, it goes back to the previous state. So let's select the opened version, and I'm going to do the same thing here. I'm going to just drag and drop it at the top, right? And it's going to do the same thing, and this time it also knows that smart animate should be the default. So I think we are pretty much good to go. As you can see, we are just changing it from open to close. Okay, now let's close it. Okay, so our component is ready here. So let's create a simple page here to see the animation. So I'm just going to click the desktop again, and let's call it a web page. And let's get back to the design tab and add some grids here once again. Okay, let's add some text here. So let's align this at center, and right here something like this would work. If I go to our assets panel, you will find our component here. So this is our accordion component. So I'm just going to drag and drop it on the web page like this, and I'm going to just center align it like this. So as you can see, since we have our width set, it's going to be perfectly aligned to our columns. Okay, so let's remove our grid here or hide it. So let's go back to the layers panel, and let's add another auto layout, so we can add more accordions here. Okay, it added some paddings. Let's set it to 0 and 0. Now let's call it something like list, and open it up, and I'm just going to create a couple of copies here. So 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 looks good. Select the main component once again and set the space between to something like 30. As you can see how it looks. So we have already added our interactions and animation to our main component. So we don't have to add anything here. It already has all the properties. So let's add change the background color so it looks better like this. So how do we see the animation? You just select the main frame and click the preview button, and it's going to load everything. So let's open it up like this, and we can close it, right? And we can do that with all of it, right? We can open it up and close it. So right now it's not scrolling because we need to tell it to Figma that there is more stuff. So let's just increase the height a little bit. Okay, now when we go back, now we can also scroll here, right? So if I open all of them, you can see it just scrolls, and I can close it, and you can see how the arrow also flips. Looks good, right? Okay, and we can also add a button here. So if I go back to the main component here, right at the bottom, to quickly select the vertical layout for the description. So we can add button here, and here I'm going to just select the text tool and click, and just maybe add something like this, and shift A to create a auto layout. Now I'm going to choose something like 18, and this one I think looks good. Now let's choose a button color. Let's add a fill here first. Now I will go at the top. Here I have some color added, so let's choose this one, and let's change the text color to white. Change the radius to something like this, much. This looks good. And select the main component and increase the height so you can see the whole thing here. Now go back to the description and increase the space between, so something like this. Okay, and let's rename it. So this is a button, so let's call it a button. Okay, now let's go back, and here is our button here. Looks good. And as you can see, it is completely responsive. So if I want to increase the width, all I have to do is select the toggles here, and I can just increase the height, increase the width of it to something like this, and choose the main and align it like this. Let me tell you the how open version looks here. So this is the version. Let's choose the open version, increase the width of it. You can see how it changes, right? You can make it smaller, something like this. I can show two different versions here. Yeah, so this is pretty much it. Hopefully you found this video helpful. Let me know in the comments if you have any questions. I'd be happy to answer them. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.